Hello. Last night we began a conversation on acceptance and what it means to me, particularly how acceptance is the first domino to fall and positive action that I take in my life. And I'd like to carry forward with that conversation by sharing a personal story, one that's especially pertinent right now in my life and has had a tremendously powerful impact on my life. When I was in my first rehab, dealing with alcohol and drug addiction, and it was what I would say an unsuccessful trip to rehab in that I wasn't able to carry forward the lessons I learned there into any lasting time of sobriety or abstinence. But while I was in that rehab, we were offered an exercise to shift our perspective. And what this exercise was intended to do was to shine a light on what we could do if we were capable of following our dreams, and maybe to bring to the surface some dreams that we didn't even know existed, in an effort to provide hope or something to hold on to, which I think is important, is critically important for people that are struggling with alcoholism or drug addiction. And in that exercise, one of the things that came to light to me, one of these things that was buried deep down beneath the surface that was a dream, but certainly was something that was far beyond reach, was the desire to return to school. Leading up to that point in my life, I had pursued and earned a bachelor's degree in speech communication and had really never done much with it other than receive the piece of paper. And at that point, I'd been out of school for 6 years, and all of a sudden, when I was sitting in my room in that rehab that night, I began playing this tape over and over in my head of what it would look like if I were actually able to return to school to pursue a graduate degree of some sort. And it seemed a million miles away. Impossible. But yet there it was, this lurking notion that maybe, just maybe, I could pursue this. And fast forward 5 years to when I got sober, and life was changing dramatically all the time. And this exercise that I practiced in rehab years before, began to kind of push itself to the surface. And I was confronted yet again with an unrealized dream, one that was much more powerful than I'd given it credit for. And that was to return to school. And I'd like to say that as I realized what I was meant to do, maybe this call to action, that I jumped right on and didn't look back, but that certainly wasn't the case. What happened was, for the next 2 years, I tried to push that dream back to where it was in the shadows, to a place that wasn't readily apparent. I didn't want to recognize this dream because I was overwhelmed with fear. And I couldn't honestly say what that fear was in the moment. I just knew that I was afraid. Possibly afraid of the change. Certainly afraid of failure. Because I'd failed many things in my life. That was one of the common threads in my life leading up to then. Certainly leading up to sobriety was failure. And that was something that was comfortable to me. Because I failed so often, and that's what I expected of myself. So to enter into sobriety and have this new outlook on life where things seemed to be going pretty well, I didn't want to rock the boat and fail. But I think one of the greatest fears that I had was a fear of success. What if things worked out? Because that was tremendously foreign to me. And so what ended up happening is that, as has happened so many times in my life, especially in the last 5 years, the right people were put in my life to deliver a message to me that I needed to hear. And one of those was a man who opened the doors of his home to me when I was really going through it and struggling mightily. I was in a living situation that I had to get out of in a hurry, and I went and sat down with him and explained why, and asked for help, which is an uncomfortable thing for me to do. And I asked him for the opportunity to stay in his home while I could get back on my feet, and he unreservedly opened his home to me, and I stayed there for the better part of 1.5 years. And in that 1.5 years, that man kept planting a seed of, why don't you return to school? And why not you? And this was coming from someone I respected more than I can express in words. And this was also coming from someone who had walked that same path not long before me. He had graduated with an MBA and encouraged me more and more and more, and instilled a sense of confidence, and not false confidence, but instilled a sense of genuine confidence in me that I wasn't able to see myself. So he was giving me a gift that I was otherwise incapable of receiving, or at least bringing about on my own. And so what ended up happening was I was finally able to accept my fears for what they were. And in accepting those fears and looking at them a little deeper and accepting that I had these fears, even unnamed fears, these fears of the unknown, I was able to begin understanding that there was a way to work through these fears. And I had a choice. Acceptance allowed me to have a choice. And that choice was to continue to allow these fears to dictate my life and to determine my actions. And these very insidious fears that changed everything about my reality and changed who I was. Or I could act in spite of those fears. And so through acceptance, I began the enrollment process, which was terrifying. It was largely unknown. I took the tests, the GRE, to get back into school. I went and sat down with administrators, and the next thing I knew, I blinked my eyes, and I'd been accepted to school, and my first semester was starting. So, what happened for me was that one of the largest, greatest changes of my life that has been, without a doubt, one of the most challenging periods of my entire life, yet one of the most rewarding periods of my entire life, because I've grown and stretched myself in ways that I didn't imagine were possible. And more than anything else, I've been able to realize a dream. It began with acceptance. And the next step was action. So what I would like to encourage anyone who comes here and is exposed to this message is, please take some time to accept the fears that you have in your life, the fears that are holding you back. Because it was only in taking that first look inside myself, and it was a scary look, it was not necessarily something that I wanted to pursue, that I was able to see that I wasn't the man that I wanted to be. And I was able to accept that, and not only that, I was able to accept responsibility for that. But furthermore, I was able to accept responsibility that I was the one who could take me where I wanted to go, and I was the only one who could. It meant that I no longer could play a victim to circumstance in my life. And in so doing, I did return to school. And this December, a little more than 5 months away, I'll graduate with my Master's in Business Administration with almost a 4.0. Who knows how the next 2 classes will go, but I have 1 A-. And I don't say that to brag, I say that because it's real. And I believe that anyone's capable of following in that path. And I'd like to share with anyone who comes across this the same confidence and the same courage that was given to me. That you can do it. I just found that for me, acceptance really was the first domino to fall. And ever since then, it's just been putting one foot in front of the other into a beautiful new life. Thank you very much. Have a great night.